The forest stands silent in the Sierra Nevada mountains, tall pines reaching toward the sky, snow covering the ground in a blanket of white. And somewhere, deep in these woods, lies a mystery that has never been solved. This is the story of 5 young men who went to watch a basketball game on a cold February night in 1978 and never came home. Close your eyes. Let us walk back through time, into the mountains, into the questions that remain unanswered to this day. In Yuba County, California, in the winter of 1978, 5 friends made plans to attend a basketball game. They were young men in their 20s and 30s. Jack Madruga, 30 years old, quiet and intelligent. Bill Sterling, 29, an avid bowler known for his kindness. Ted Wire, 32, gentle and mild-mannered. Jackie Hewitt, 24, the youngest of the group. And Gary Mathias, 25, a former Army veteran who played guitar in a rock band. These 5 men had something special. They were part of a local basketball team called the Gateway Gators, a team for people with intellectual disabilities. They loved the game. They loved spending time together. They were friends in the truest sense of the word. On Friday, February 24th, they planned to drive to Chico, California, about 50 miles from their homes in Yuba County. Chico State was playing UC Davis in a basketball tournament. The boys were excited. They wanted to watch good basketball. And they had their own game the next day, a playoff game they had been preparing for. They needed to be home that night. They knew this. Their families knew this. Jack Madruga would drive. He owned a 1969 Mercury Montego, a reliable car, well-maintained. Madruga was a careful driver, someone who knew the roads well, someone who always made sure there was enough gas in the tank. The 5 friends piled into the car that afternoon, full of anticipation, ready for an evening of basketball. The game was good. Chico State won. The boys enjoyed themselves, cheering, watching the plays, eating snacks from the concession stand. When the game ended, around 10 o'clock that evening, they headed back to the parking lot, back to the Mercury, back toward home. They should have arrived home by midnight. The route was simple, straightforward, Highway 70 south, back to Yuba County. An easy drive on roads they knew. But they never arrived. Their families waited. Mothers looked at clocks. Fathers paced. When midnight came and went, worry began to grow. When 1 o'clock passed, then 2, then 3, panic set in. Phone calls were made, questions asked. Where were the boys? Had anyone seen them? Had there been an accident? At dawn, families gathered. A search began. Hospitals were called. Police were notified. Missing persons reports were filed. 5 young men had vanished somewhere between Chico and home. 50 miles, 1 hour. But they were gone. Days passed. Search parties combed the roads between Chico and Yuba County. Nothing. No sign of the car, no sign of the boys, no reports of accidents, no witnesses who remembered seeing them. It was as if they had simply disappeared into the night. Then, 4 days later, on Tuesday, February the 28th, a Forest Service employee was checking roads in the Plumas National Forest, high in the mountains, 70 miles from Chico. 70 miles in the wrong direction, the opposite direction from home. He was checking a remote mountain road called Oroville-Quincy Road, a road that climbed into wilderness, a road that in winter was often impassable, buried in snow, and there, parked on the side of the road, 19 miles up the mountain, he found Jack Madruga's Mercury Montego. The car was neatly parked, not crashed, not damaged, just sitting there on the side of the road, covered in snow. The Forest Service employee approached carefully. He looked inside. Empty. The keys were gone. The car was locked. But something was wrong, very wrong. When police arrived and opened the car, they found it in perfect working condition. The gas tank still had a quarter tank of fuel. The battery worked. There was no mechanical problem. The car could have been driven back down the mountain with no difficulty. But it had been abandoned here, in the middle of nowhere, on a mountain road that led away from everything the boys knew. Inside the car, police found maps, a sneaker, Madruga's neatly folded green parka, but nothing that explained why the car was here, why they had driven so far in the wrong direction, why they had left the road they knew for this remote mountain path. The police examined the area around the car. They found tracks, footprints in the snow leading up the road, higher into the mountains, away from civilization, away from help. The tracks showed that the 5 men had walked together in a group, continuing up the mountain road after abandoning the car. But why? Why would they leave a perfectly working car and walk into the wilderness on a freezing February night? They were not dressed for a mountain hike. They wore light jackets, street shoes, nothing suitable for snow and cold. They had no food, no water, no camping equipment, and they were walking away from town, away from safety, deeper into the forest. The search intensified. Helicopters flew over the area. Search and rescue teams on snowshoes combed the forest. Volunteers joined the effort. Days turned into weeks. The snow was deep, sometimes 6 feet or more. The temperatures at night dropped well below freezing. The searchers looked but found nothing. No sign of the 5 men, no indication of where they had gone. Winter held the mountains in its grip. The search had to be called off. The snow was too deep. The conditions too dangerous. The families waited, hoped, prayed. But as the weeks turned to months, hope began to fade. Then spring came. The snow began to melt. The mountains revealed their secrets slowly, reluctantly. And what they revealed was devastating. In June, 4 months after the disappearance, a group of motorcyclists rode into the Plumas National Forest. They were exploring, enjoying the mountain trails now that the snow had melted. They came across a Forest Service trailer, a small structure used by workers when maintaining the forest. It was 19 miles up the road from where the Mercury had been found. As they approached, they noticed something. A terrible smell. The smell of decay, the smell of death. They broke the window and looked inside, and there, on a bed, wrapped in sheets, was the body of Ted Wire. Wire had been dead for weeks, possibly months. His body was emaciated, skeletal. He had lost half his body weight. His feet were severely frostbitten. His beard had grown long, suggesting He had survived in the trailer for an extended period before dying. But here is what made the discovery so baffling, so inexplicable. The trailer had been stocked with supplies. There was food, canned goods, dried foods, enough to feed several people for months. There was propane, a heater, blankets, everything needed for survival. But the food had barely been touched. Only a few cans had been opened. The rest sat there untouched, while Ted Wire starved to death. The propane tank was still half full, but the heater had not been used properly. Wire's feet were so badly frostbitten that his toes had fallen off. He had died slowly of starvation and cold, surrounded by the means of survival. Why? Why had he not eaten the food? Why had he not used the heater? What had happened in that trailer during those long weeks? The discovery of Wire's body renewed the search. Teams returned to the forest, searching the area around the trailer more thoroughly, and they found more. Bill Sterling's body was found outside the trailer in the snow. He had died of hypothermia. His body showed no signs of injury, no indication of what had driven him out into the cold. Jackie Hewitt's skull and bones were found even further up the mountain, beyond the trailer, as if he had kept walking, kept searching for something. His remains were scattered, making it difficult to determine how he had died. Jack Madruga's remains were found near the trailer as well, badly decomposed. The cause of death was unclear, but Gary Mathias was never found. To this day, his fate remains unknown. Some believe he died in the forest, his body yet to be discovered. Others wonder if he somehow survived, if he walked out of the mountains and disappeared into a new life. But there has never been any trace of him. No sightings, no evidence, nothing. The autopsies raised more questions than they answered. The coroner estimated that the men had survived for weeks in the forest, possibly as long as 2 or 3 months. But why? Why had they not simply walked back down the mountain? The road they had walked up was the same road that led back down. It was not hidden. It was not difficult to follow. A few hours of walking would have brought them back to the car. A few more hours, back to civilization. Theories emerged, wild and varied. Some believed the men had been chased into the mountains by someone, perhaps frightened into abandoning their car and fleeing, but there was no evidence of anyone else, no additional tracks, no signs of a struggle. Others suggested they had become disoriented, confused by the dark and the snow. But all 5 men, for months, and why had they gone up the mountain in the first place, 70 miles in the wrong direction? Some pointed to Gary Mathias. He had a history of mental health issues, schizophrenia, though it was well controlled with medication. Had he had an episode? Had he convinced the others to follow him into the mountains? But those who knew Mathias said this didn't fit. He had been stable. He had been looking forward to the basketball game the next day. There was no reason to think he would suddenly lead his friends to their deaths. The families struggled to understand. These were young men who had intellectual disabilities, yes, but they were not children. They knew their way around their community. Madruga was an experienced driver. They knew to stay warm, to seek help, to not wander into danger. And yet They had walked away from a working car, away from a road they could have followed back to safety and into the wilderness. The case became known as American Dyatlov Pass, named after a similar mystery in Russia where 9 hikers died under strange circumstances in the Ural Mountains. Like the Dyatlov Pass incident, the Yuba County Five case was marked by inexplicable decisions, unexplained behavior, and a sense that something had terrified or compelled the men to act in ways that defied logic. The trailer where Weiher died held clues but no answers. A window had been broken from the outside, suggesting that's how the men had entered. Weiher's shoes were found in the trailer neatly placed, though his feet were badly frostbitten. Why had he taken off his shoes? Why had he not put them back on? There were signs that someone had tried to light the propane heater, but had done so incorrectly. The valve had been opened too much, flooding the area with propane, making it dangerous to light. Had they been afraid to use it after that? Had they not known how to adjust it? The food in the trailer included rations that required preparation, cans that needed to be opened. There was evidence that some cans had been opened, but only a few. Had they lacked the strength, the knowledge, the will? And what of the others? Bill Sterling had left the trailer and died in the snow. Why? What had driven him out? Jackie Hewitt had walked even further, past the trailer, deeper into the wilderness. Why? Where had he been going? The questions multiplied, but the answers never came. In the years since, investigators have revisited the case periodically. New theories have been proposed. Advanced forensic techniques have been applied to the evidence. But the mystery remains unsolved. The families never got the closure they sought. They never learned why their sons and brothers drove up that mountain road. They never understood what happened in those woods during those long winter months. The forest keeps its secrets. The snow melts and returns each year. The trailer where Ted Weiher died still stands, though it has been moved, and somewhere in those mountains, perhaps, Gary Mathias rests, his story untold. The Yuba County Five remain one of the most baffling mysteries in American history. 5 friends who went to watch a basketball game and never came home. 5 families who waited for answers that never came. Tonight, we remember them. Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Ted Weiher, Jackie Hewitt, Gary Mathias. Young men who loved basketball, who loved their families, who loved their friends. Young men who drove into the mountains one cold February night and into a mystery that has never been solved. The forest stands silent in the Sierra Nevada mountains, tall pines reaching toward the sky, snow covering the ground each winter, melting each spring. And somewhere in those woods, the answers wait, patient, hidden, perhaps forever unknowable. Let us rest now, here at the edge of mystery, where questions linger like morning mist, and the forest keeps its ancient silence. Sleep well,